Very much. Joining us now, the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for joining us. I want to get your reaction to a wide range of these breaking developments right now. You heard Barbara Starr reporting U.S. Special Operations Forces. They are now on the ground in northern Syria. Do you expect progress from this effort?
I expect progress overall. I want the president to develop a strategy, and I want to be able to convey that to the U.S. military. Our United States military can accomplish anything it chooses to do if the mission is clear and there aren't so many politically correct hamperings of their ability to execute on that. So set the mission and let the military go do it, and they'll get it done.
What's your understanding, Congressman, right now, the current U.S. strategy in Syria, the fight against ISIS?
I think the number one thing in the fight against ISIS is we cannot allow them to hold any ground. They just cannot hold ground. And that doesn't mean you can just carpet bomb. That's not going to actually win the war. You're going to have to actually have people on the ground. I'm not saying those are necessarily going to be U.S. troops, but we've got to be able to have a coalition and empower people to go in and clear it literally room by room by room in order to get it done.
Would you go so far, as some have suggested, even cooperating with the regime of Bashar al-Assad, which is also fighting ISIS, to get their involvement, their support in trying to destroy that so-called caliphate?
Again, this is what makes it terribly difficult and why the president needs to introduce a strategy that is crystal clear and execute on that. Thus far, the president has not done that. So that would make it terribly complicated. It's not necessarily the first choice in the way to get it done, but we've got to build a coalition of people, not just our allies, but others, in order to get it done.
Do you think there should be a congressional resolution authorizing the use of military force against ISIS in Syria?
I do. I think we should call terrorists terrorists. I think we should call a war a war. I think we should provide clarity and then give the moral support, the funding that it needs, and the clarity that the families and those that are fighting that they need in order to get it done. I do think Congress should have the president come, make the case, and then we should vote on that.
The administration says they're ready for such a vote, but it hasn't come up. You're a leader in the Republican majority in the House of Representatives. Why hasn't a resolution been put forward where members can stand and vote yea or nay on this authorization for the use of military force against ISIS?
There does need to be such a resolution. It's something I would look forward to debating, but I think the administration also has to provide clarity as to how long that would go. We don't want to give them a blank check to last forever, and I would look forward to having such a debate and having such a vote.
So what I hear you saying is you want such a vote, you just want specific language, because I know at least on the Senate side there is specific language. Senator Kaine, among others, they've been pushing for this for well over a year.
Yeah, there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that are resistant to this. Some would argue that authority is already there. Look, if there is a clear and present danger to the United States of America, the president could, should, and must act decisively and immediately. But if you're going to engage U.S. troops in an ongoing war, then I think you need to come get that authorization from the United States Congress. The presidents on both sides of the aisle have skirted past this, and I think it's wrong. I think it should change.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with you on that. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq right now, this assault to try to recapture the city of Ramadi by the Iraqi military. The U.S. is involved to a certain degree from the air, but the Iraqi government says they don't want U.S. troops involved. They would rather be aligned with Iran right now and the Shiite militias. When you hear that, what goes through your mind?
We have spent billions of dollars in an untold amount of U.S. blood in order to make that opportunity for Iraq to be as free as we could possibly make it. And I want them to have nothing but success. I hope that training and that money and those resources have been used wisely. But everything I've seen so far gives me real questions and doubt about that. But again, it's about seizing back the territory, and I feel for those people that are trying to make it happen.
Congressman, we have a lot more to discuss, including the latest problem that the U.S. Secret Service has. Your committee oversees the Secret Service. We're going to assess what's going on, a major blunder not far from the White House. We'll be right back. For the U.S. Secret Service, an agent's gun badge and other items have been taken from his car close to the White House. Let's go to our senior Washington correspondent, Joe Johns. Joe, what are you learning?
Wolf, it's really surprising and more trouble for the Secret Service, not only because an agent's gun and badge are missing, but also because it appears to have been a brazen car break-in during the day in Washington, D.C., not far from Secret Service headquarters. The U.S. Secret Service, charged with protecting the president and first family, facing another blunder. This time, an agent said to work in the Presidential Protective Division has his service weapon, badge, and other items stolen from his car. It happened in broad daylight outside Secret Service headquarters about a mile from the White House.
This is a total violation of basic security rules involving any law enforcement to allow a gun, a badge, to be locked up in a car and left unattended.
The D.C. police report reveals what was taken. The black Sig Sauer handgun, his radio, handcuffs, a flash drive, a black bag, and the badge. The Secret Service declined to comment on the incident, but a law enforcement official said the USB is encrypted and password protected, and its theft does not appear to be a threat to the agency. But it's still fresh fodder for critics who had already been harping on the agency's record.
They are supposed to be guarding the President of the United States of America.
It goes back to a really rotten management culture in the Secret Service, which condones corner-cutting, laxness.
The incident adds to a long list of Secret Service breaches and embarrassments in the last few years. Just last month, a man was taken into custody after jumping over a White House fence while the first family was inside celebrating Thanksgiving. Also in November, a Secret Service officer assigned to the White House was arrested after he was caught in a sting, allegedly sending naked pictures of himself to someone he thought was a 14-year-old girl. Last September, a man jumped the White House fence with a knife in his pocket, breaching the mansion's doors, and ran through much of the main floor, past a stairway that leads up to the first family's residence. Now, we understand from talking to law enforcement that there is a way to disable the Secret Service radio that was stolen, so there's not a lot of fear that someone could be using it to listen to proprietary Secret Service communications. The D.C. police report said the agent saw someone reach into the vehicle, but he did not see him take anything out. Wolf?
Joe Johns, thanks very much. We're back with Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah. He's the chairman of the House Oversight Government Reform Committee. You just studied the U.S. Secret Service recently, putting out a very lengthy report. When you hear about this latest incident, Congressman, what's your reaction?
These things can't keep happening. They have a deep-seated cultural problem, and one of the things that we unearthed in this bipartisan report that we did with Elijah Cummings is the deep lack of training. The average person who works for the Secret Service goes through training equivalent to about 25 minutes per year. And so when you have somebody who's outside normal protocol, isn't adhering to the normal practices of any law enforcement agency, I want to go back and see, is it just one problematic person, or was this something that is systemic throughout the organization? But you can't do that. You can't leave your service revolver in a car that evidently all it needed to do was be unzipped. It was just a plastic covering to get at this weapon, and that's just not right.
The gun, the badge, the radio, the handcuffs, the flash drive, all stolen. Obviously, these individuals, they're entrusted to protect the president's life, the first family. How does something like this potentially even happen?
I don't know, but the problem is it keeps happening, and that's the look. When you have an agency as large as Homeland Security, somebody's going to do something stupid somewhere. But the Secret Service, time and time again, continues to have a blunder in a no-fail mission, and that's again why we continue to highlight that. Not just embarrass it, because most of the people working there are good, patriotic, dutiful people, but the problem is they have this culture that allows these types of things to happen, and I'll be fascinated to see what kind of punishment this person gets.
As you heard in Joe Johns' report, and as you well know better than anyone, the agency certainly has been hit by a string of controversies and incidents in the past year or two. Do you have confidence in the current director?
You know, 3 times in a row, we have had directors that have provided false or misleading testimony to Congress. The cultural problems have not improved. So I think we need to elevate that. I think we need to look at the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, because we have the same problems happening with director after director. I think the question really needs to go to the Secretary and the President himself.
Let's move on and talk about some other issues right now, really disturbing issues. In a hearing last week, as you know, it was revealed that the government has no idea how many of the more than 9,000 people whose visas to the United States were revoked for possible ties to terrorism actually still remain in the United States right now. You heard that. Does this scare you?
No, it scares the living daylights out of me. State Department in their written testimony said they had revoked since 9/11 122,000 visas. But of those that were revoked, 9,500 were because of ties to terrorism. And I asked them, where are these people? And it was crickets. They had no idea. And somebody at State Department knew that there was a tie to terrorism, revoked the visa, and they're still here, potentially. They got to answer this question. I don't think they have a clue.
We're also learning more about Tashfeen Malik, the wife of the San Bernardino killer, Saeed Rizwan Farouk. The couple, as you know, met online. They had legal requirements to get her a visa, a fiancé visa to the United States. We're now looking at that application. They've just released that there were no red flags in her case at all. She passed accordingly, apparently with flying colors, but both of them were radicalized long before the visa was issued. How can this be?
Well, as the House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte pointed out, they didn't necessarily pass with flying colors. You can't just go to farmersonly.com and talk online and then suddenly expect to get a visa to come to the United States of America. I'm not saying they went to that particular website, but you can't just chat online and then come here. There is a requirement where you meet in person, and there was no evidence in that file that says that they actually met in person. In fact, the person who was at Homeland Security or at State that was supposed to be looking at this file requested a translation, never got it, but the visa was still approved. And so it begs the question, how does this visa get approved, and where is the documentation that these people actually met in person in order to get this K-1 visa?
Well, there's a letter in the documentation that they released today from Saeed Rizwan Farouk, the husband, saying he was in Saudi Arabia and Mecca performing the Hajj exactly the same time she was. My fiancé and her family drove from Riyadh to Mecca so that we could meet, and it is on this day that we got engaged. That's what he claims in this affidavit that he provided the State Department.
One of the people entered into Saudi Arabia starting in June, I believe it was June 4th, on a 60-day visa. Are you telling me that he overstayed, that one of those people overstayed their visa? Because the other one didn't enter into Saudi Arabia until October. And so I think, as pointed out by the Judiciary Committee, which I happen to serve, I think there's a legitimate question. Where is the proof that they actually met in person and fell in love enough so that our government felt compelled to allow them to come in and into the United States of America? They did not follow that protocol. It certainly is a big question mark that we want some answers for.
I'm sure you do, but so what's the most important thing they need to do right now to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, you had Ben Rhodes out there going on all the Sunday morning talk shows talking about how well these people are vetted, the deep investigations, and they're checking all the files, not just for the refugees, but how about all the other visas that are here? How about the 50,000+ people that claim asylum in this country? You know, most of these interviews, Wolf, happen on the telephone. They don't even necessarily happen in person. In Lebanon, if you're trying to get this done, we have a team that comes in and does some quick interviews. I think we're deeply concerned that if you're going to bring in people to the United States, they have to be vetted. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. I really don't.
Ben Rhodes is the President's Deputy National Security Advisor. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.
Merry Christmas to you and your family.